Welcome to this podcast series titled Legacy Beyond Wealth, where we'll learn more about Richard and Eva. After years of building their family business and wealth, they face some tough questions. How can they distribute their assets? How do they protect their legacy? And most importantly, how do they keep family harmony among their children? In this series, get a sneak peek into real conversations between clients and their advisor at Providend, and learn how thoughtful legacy planning brings peace of mind and protects what matters most to our clients and their families. Previously on Legacy Beyond Wealth.
Hi Richard, hi Eva. Thank you so much for coming.
In the past 15 years especially, I've put in a lot of effort in building our family business to where it is today.
And I've heard so many horror stories, right? This is in the media, even through friends, how siblings can fight over a house. And I never want to see that happening to our own children.
I won't be surprised if there are minor conflicts between siblings and their spouses and all that. But I also just want to make sure that it is not money that causes the conflicts or the arguments.
After 2 weeks of anticipation, Richard and Eva are back in the Providend meeting suite for their follow-up meeting with Chris, a client advisor at Providend.
Hi Richard and Eva, welcome back. How are both of you?
Yeah, but we are good.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Chris.
Great. Come, take a seat. Well, as I've mentioned in our first meeting, from the information you have given me, I came up with an initial legacy plan that not just to pass on your wealth, but to do it in a way that protects your family and preserves harmony. But before I go through the plan, I just want to check whether there are other details that you have thought through, and both of you are back home, and as you are preparing for this meeting, are there any things that we have not discussed and you wanted to just let me know in this meeting?
Yeah, actually, from what we shared last time, everything is still the same, but we forgot to mention one thing. So this one thing is that we are currently supporting our elderly parents as well. So just in case, Richard and myself goes before them, we just want to make sure that they are also well taken care of.
Chris earnestly noted the new information down while nodding his head in agreement.
Right. So both your elderly parents, they are still around?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think that's very important, but no worries at all. I think it's quite a simple solution that we can put into the plan. But besides this, anything else that you want to let me know?
I think that's all we have for now. Just wanted to thank you for creating a safe environment for this discussion. We are all ears to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, well, it's really a pleasure. But along the way, if our discussion triggers some thoughts and you have more things to add, just feel free to just let me know. I mean, we can just add on to the plan. And as I mentioned, this is really first cut, right? The plans can still go through changes if there is a need to. So maybe as a start, I would like to just give you a summary of all the information that I've collected from the first meeting. And of course, not forgetting what you have just told me earlier on. Right, and the way we do the plan, very broadly, is based on the 5W and 1H. What, when, who, where, why, and how. Right, so we have talked about a lot of things. So allow me just to summarize, and please stop me if any of the information that I'm telling you is wrong. Would that be okay?
Richard and Eva smile softly and give Chris a nod of approval to continue.
Okay, so let me just begin with a summary of what we have discussed. Okay, so this is on the what. And this refers to the assets that you have and the assets that you want to include into your plan. Right, so you mentioned in the last meeting that you have a family business that you think is valued at about $30 million. Right, and you have personal assets totaling about $25 million. And of course, you have two properties that is worth about $13 million. Just wanted to check that I'm correct with that.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right? Okay, great. Now, of course, the next part then is who. And this refers to who you are intending to have these assets distributed to, meaning to say your beneficiaries. Okay, so of course, you have your 3 children, David, Mary, and Lincoln. And of course, you have your grandchild, Yan. And just today, you told me about your elderly parents. Right? Now, again, if there are any beneficiaries that you thought of, feel free to let me know. Okay? Then, of course, let's talk about when, okay, which would be the funds for the 3 children. So basically, when is about when do you want to give these assets, right? I mean, in legacy planning and estate planning, sometimes people think that the plan is all about only giving when one passes on, but it's not like that, right? Giving away can be a lifetime gift, right? So, but for you, you mentioned that you want to provide money for your 3 children only after your demise, nothing for them as at now, right? And for Yen, your grandson, education plan again after your demise, right? Of course, if you are around and Yen is growing up fine and you want to give him along the way, of course you can. But just in case, unfortunately, you passed on, you wanted to make sure that Yen has got enough money for education. Okay, so this money is accessible to Yen as early as 18 years old. Right? Of course, if he served NS and he doesn't really need the money, the distribution can be delayed. Okay? And what is also very important, and it is more like a recommendation, although we discussed about it, but it's something that I feel very strongly for, which is I think you really need to have a succession plan. Because based on what you mentioned earlier on, you don't really have a succession plan. Mary is working the business. You know that David, the skills are transferable, but actually you don't know really whether they want to take over. But we need to talk about this, right? It's important to talk about this because if you don't have a succession plan, that $30 million that we think the business is worth may not be worth $30 million when you are no longer around. Okay, so this part of the plan, we need to talk about it a bit more, and this is as soon as possible. This thing cannot be done only upon your demise. And again, feel free to jump in. Okay, don't let me finish. If you feel that you want to say anything, feel free to jump in, okay? Well, your assets are in Singapore, right? So you have your personal assets as well as your 2 properties in Singapore. Okay, and then we come to the very important part of the plan, which is why. Okay, why is important? Because in the distribution, in the gifting, in all that you want to do, it must align with the purpose of the plan, the values that you want to transfer. Right? So you have mentioned that you want to prevent family conflict, especially over inheritance and the family business. You want to make sure that the children feel that they are treated fairly, and then they don't feel resentment, just because they think that they are supposed to receive something, but they are not. That's very important for you. Of course, what is also important for you is to protect your grandson's education, not just to make sure that he has the money, but the money that you leave behind, you want to make sure that there is no mismanagement, and also to ensure that the values that you have, what you hold on to very closely in your heart, gets passed to them, and then it can be passed on to the future generation, right? So just want to make sure that I have captured everything and have not missed out any information you've given me.
Yeah, thanks for the summary, Chris. That was very succinct.
There's one thing I wanted to add on, because when you mentioned about the giving away our estate, it doesn't have to wait till our demise. One thing that came up with me is that we mentioned about wanting to be fair with the 3 children, and the likelihood is that, David and Mary may at least receive something because they may be working in the business, or they may be the business may be passed on to them. So perhaps later you can share more about how perhaps we could also create something that we can give to Lincoln, and he doesn't wait until we are gone.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll take note of that, right? Just to make sure that Lincoln gets something, because Lincoln most likely will not take over the business, and you want to make sure that that's fair. I just remember one thing that I didn't include here. Please pardon me for that. I remember in our earlier meeting, remember we had that difficult discussion about ring fencing your assets from your children-in-law, now and future, right? So I think I didn't capture it here, but I just wanted to make sure that that's still important for both of you. Have you all gone back to discuss about this?
I think after the discussion back at home, I think ultimately, as you shared about, the why, we really just want to make sure that it is all about the family harmony. It is true we are still not very comfortable in allowing
your in-laws, right? Your children-in-law.
For Jane, to actually directly manage all the monies. So as much as possible, if we can, if we don't have to do that, that would be great. But after all, she is the mother of our grandchildren, of our grandchild, and if she really needs to be the one to manage some of the monies, then I think that's something that we would still be open.
Right. I mean, one easy way out of this is that, you can still give Jane something, right? In your trust, in your will, whether it's a trust or a will, you can still give Jane something, an amount that is not overly significant, but yet big enough to show that you appreciate her, right, as your daughter-in-law. But in the trust, you can also ring-fence your assets, just in case in the event, unfortunately, like a divorce happened, and you can do that. And if you're afraid that if Jane knows about this, she feels sore, unhappy, you might want to know that there is no need for Jane to know exactly what is written in the trust, right? All they need to know is how much they are getting on a month-to-month basis, on a year-to-year basis. There's really no need for her to know that she is being ring-fenced out from the assets, right? So then she doesn't have to feel sore about it. Okay? But think about this, because this, I know it's a very sensitive issue, and we can put it in the plan. But along the way, if you change your mind, let me know. We can always take that out. Would that be okay?
Sure. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, so let me now move on to the plan, right? Whatever we have discussed earlier is just to capture the information and some of the important things that you have told me. But let me now quickly move on to the plan. Again, please don't let me finish reading the whole thing. If you feel you have any questions, stop me at any point in time. Okay, or otherwise I'll pause for a while and ask whether you have any questions for me.
Chris clicks his keyboard, changing the slide to the next.
Okay, so again, this is very high level. The first thing we want to take care of is about structuring an education fund for Yen. Okay, so basically we want to set up a trust, right? And we want to set up a family trust for you, and we want to give the trustees the oversight and flexibility in managing the education fund for Yen, right? So the trustee can be a human trustee, if you can think of one, somebody that you trust, a human trustee, right? Otherwise, if you cannot think of anybody, a human trustee, you can also potentially engage a professional trustee or a corporate trustee, meaning to say a trust company to be the trustee for the trust that you set up. Okay, so again, we can think a bit more about that, but whoever this trustee is, whether it's a human trustee or a corporate trustee, basically what you can do is that you can give this trustee discretion over additional distribution for Yen. This could be beyond tuition fee. It could be essential expenses. It could be even medical emergencies. You can all put this under the Yen fund, so-called, right? And beyond just education, if this amount is not used, whatever that you have set aside, you can also allow the trustee in their discretion to use the fund for Yen for other important purposes, approved purposes such as starting a business, right? Of course, you can put criteria into what kind of business that it should be, it should meet certain requirements. All these things we can go into the details, but this is really very high level, okay? Another thing that you can put into the trust for Yen is that not to quote unquote spoil him, your trust can ensure that you want to make sure that Yen also subsequently work, right, before he have access to the fund. Okay. Now, I'm just going to stop here for a while and ask whether there are any questions for me.
I'm thinking for me, the question I have in my as you are describing this is, it sounds like entrusting the money to somebody like Ian's own parents. But I can imagine we might be able to assign the trustee to our son, right? But what I want to find out is if in the event that even Ian's father, if he dies unexpectedly, what would then happen?
If Ian's father die unexpectedly.
Yes, and he is the trustee.
Well, I mean, if he's going to be the trustee and if he dies, hopefully in the trust, there should be an alternate trustee or a replacement trustee, right? So it will not be safe if the trust has only one trustee. So I suggest that you appoint a few more trustees. And again, we can think about who these trustees are. And of course, we can also appoint a protector. A protector is someone to make sure that the trustees do their job properly. Now, in the event there are no more trustees for whatever reason, right? Quite unlikely, but if that happens, the protector can also help to go and resettle the trust or appoint other trustees, right? So all these things can be taken care of.
Right. And you mentioned also if it is a corporate trustee, can the corporate trustee actually also perform all these duties?
Yes, they can. But the thing that you have to understand is that, I mean, for human trustee, especially if the trustees are your beneficiaries, it could be your 3 children who are the trustees, then the cost of maintaining the trust may not have to be so high. Right? You don't have to pay so much because they are beneficiaries anyway. But if you're appointing a good corporate trustees, you have to consider the cost. Right? A good corporate trustee in Singapore, an independent trustee, I'm not talking about bank trustee, right? An independent trustee in Singapore, I mean, the fees really ranges. It can be as low as about $5,000 a year. That's very, very low, Sing dollars, to as high as what I've seen before, about $20,000 per year, right? And well, when we come to the corporate trustee part, I will guide you through. I will talk about the pros and cons of different trustees because it's a bit difficult to say this, but unfortunately in this world of corporate trustee, there is a price to pay for good trustees, right? Sometimes when you use a trustees that seemingly the cost is low, they might not do as good a job as you think for you, especially if your distribution wishes are complex. You really want to use good trustees, right? So, but I have jumped the gun. Okay, when we go to that part whereby we have to choose corporate trustee, we can look at the various corporate trustees available in Singapore. In Providend, we have got a list. We keep a list, and there are pros and cons. The team has also gone into looking at the financial statement, the balance sheet of these trustees to make sure that these trustees, they are sustainable. Yeah, we can go through the list and select a few. And then when you finally sort of like select the few, we can also go corporate trustees, quote unquote, shopping together. You can interview the trustees, and you only need to decide which trustees is suitable for you after that so-called shopping. Would that be okay?
Yes, that would be okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Eva, any questions for me?
Just one. You mentioned about the protector, right? So can the protector be a corporate? Is there such a thing as a corporate protector?
Yes, there is a professional protector if you want to appoint, right? Usually, it doesn't always have to be the case, but usually that is the law firm or lawyer, right, who is willing to take up that responsibility of a protector, right? So again, we can come to that if you really cannot find anybody who is able to help you. We can talk about that later on. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is very important. As I mentioned, right, is about the succession plan for your business, right, Richard? Because your business actually constitute a large proportion of your assets, right? You estimated it to be about 30 million, right? And as I mentioned earlier on, well, the business is only valued 30 million if you are not around when the buyer knows that it's going to be run properly. But if there is no succession plan, then it's going to be tough to be able to get 30 million. And whatever plans you have in place, the giving, is not going to happen if the business is not worth 30 million, right? So immediately, I think what you need to do is to identify a successor, right? You probably might want to organize a conversation between David and Mary, have a heart-to-heart talk with them to check their interests, whether they are keen to run the business in the future. Yeah. Now, I'll leave it to you whether you want to talk to them both at the same time, or you feel that you want to talk to them separately, right? Understanding that David has never been involved in the business, and right. Mary has been the one, right? And if you feel that you prefer to talk to David separately, then you can do that. But if you need me to come in and facilitate a discussion, I can also do it. What do you think?
Yeah, actually, I think we are a bit of a dilemma. We are also unsure how to approach this situation because it feels a little bit sensitive as well. Yeah, because Mary has contributed quite a bit, and I don't want to also give her the wrong impression.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, so if that's the case, my suggestion is you might want to have a word with Mary first, right? And also try and suss out what she thinks if you bring your son, her brother David in, right? And then of course, you might want to talk to David separately and see whether he's keen in the business. Now, in the event that both of them are not interested, or even if both of them are interested, we should really look into a succession plan. If both of them are interested, I think there should be some training program to make sure that they are groomed appropriately to take over the job. But if both of them are not interested, I think we need to put in place a business exit plan for you to make sure that either there's a successor when you are no longer around, or there's a ready buyer that buy your business when you're no longer around, right? For that, I can always ask my colleague from the business exit department to formulate a plan for you. Would that be okay?
Yes, I think we'll probably need more handles on that.
Great. Now, in our last discussion, Richard, I didn't hear that you have a key person or a key man insurance. Am I right to say that?
Actually, we do have a US $1 million life insurance policy.
Right. But that's for your own. It's really for your family, right? This $1 million US insurance policy is paid by you or by the company?
This insurance policy is actually paid by me.
Okay.
And it's on my life.
Okay, understand. So that's your personal insurance. In the event of your demise, this money goes to your family estate and is used for the distribution of your assets. But a key person insurance or a key man insurance is one that is owned by the company on you, right? So the company is the owner. The company pays the premium for the insurance. And in the event of your unfortunate demise, the company claims this insurance, and they can use this money to run the company and perhaps even look for a temporary successor or a temporary CEO until the company is sold, right? So if you don't have this, my suggestion is that we should look into this. It doesn't have to be very expensive, right? Because normally we will advocate buying a term insurance on your life, $1 million, $2 million. It wouldn't be too expensive. Yeah, but it's important because it will provide some liquidity for the business to continue the operation while you're no longer around, while you're not around, and before the next step, like a sale. Okay? Well, you can think about that.
Behind this entire podcast was our CEO, Chris's Money Wisdom book. We're proud to announce that we have launched our second edition of the book titled Money Wisdom Part 2, More Simple Truths for Financial Wellness. If you're interested in getting your very own copy, please check out the link in the show notes for more information. Thank you, and let's get back to the episode.
Okay, so the next part on the plan is actually about managing your personal assets and distribution. Okay, now, Mary and David is going to get in this case, the way I'm seeing it, if they agree, right, they are going to get the lion's share of the assets, which is the business, $30 million, right? And just to make sure that Lincoln, he doesn't feel unfairly treated, right? I would say that a large part of the personal assets would then have to be given to Lincoln. But I know that Lincoln is a very dedicated teacher. And so his mind may not be in how to manage the assets. Right now, so if you want to make sure that Lincoln knows how to make use of this money that you are going to leave behind, which is quite a substantial sum, you may want to structure the payment in such a way whereby it's paid to Lincoln either on a monthly basis or lump sum, 3 lump sums, right, at different age. Right? What do both of you all think?
Yeah, I have that same idea. I do not want to burden Lincoln with having to manage such a large estate all of a sudden, especially.
Right.
I'm leaning towards having a more regular payment structure. What do you think, Eva?
Yeah, because I think if we do the 3 lump sums at different stages, then when he get a lump sum, I'm not sure he know what to do with it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my thought as well.
Okay. So what we can do is we can give Lincoln annual amount, right? I'm not sure whether we need to give him monthly because he's working anyway, right? And give an annual amount, right? But we give the trustees discretion to dispense ad hoc amounts if Lincoln really need it. And again, we can put in the trust what are some of the examples of situations whereby the trustees are allowed to dispense this amount.
Yeah, like
Would that be
maybe
fine?
medical emergency.
It can be medical emergency. Or, for example, Lincoln suddenly he wants to set up a tuition agency, or a teaching academy because he's so much into teaching, right? And he feels that he wants to do this as a business. Then he might want to go to the trustees and ask for money. And again, the trustees will be given certain guidance, including getting the protector to agree before monies are being dispensed to Lincoln. Would that be okay?
Yes, I think that's something that we would like to achieve. One question I have is that when you mentioned like if Lincoln has a sudden wish to set up something like an academy or his own business, is the process of requesting for these assets going to be very difficult, very complex for him?
No, I don't think so, right? I mean, he just has to go to the trustee to ask for the money. Of course, the trustees, being your appointed trustees, has to make sure that Lincoln, not just Lincoln, and we talked about Yen earlier on, when they ask for money, it must be for valid reasons, and they must show, quote-unquote, proofs to the trustees that these requests are valid. For example, if Lincoln is going to start a business, he must certainly have a business plan, right? I mean, you can't just go to a trustee and say, I want $1 million to start a business without any plan in mind. And any good trustee will say, I'm not sure whether when I give you that $1 million, you're going to use it to really start up a business or buy a Lamborghini, So the trustees will make sure that they do their proper due diligence so that they can dispense this money at the same time discharge their responsibility. Yeah. So it will not be too easy, but neither is going to be too difficult, which is what you want. You don't want it to be too easy either. Would that be right?
Yes, I think, of course, ideally we don't want it to be too easy. But I'm also curious if there is a situation or that we didn't expect, and he wants to request for a lump sum from that, and it may not be any of the reasons that we have noted down. Would that actually create any obstacles in the future? Yeah.
So we'll make sure that we put that into the trustee, discretion on the trustee, but letter of wishes, we try and keep it as general as possible to give general guidance. Just in case there are situations, I mean, obviously we cannot include every situation in the letter of wishes. The trustee can still make the correct decision, a wise decision to dispense that money to not just Lincoln, but possibly Yen as well, right? And possibly even David and Mary, we can have a clause to do that, right? Just in case there are situations that you cannot foresee and they need money.
And we can limit, we can have a limit on how much that fund is, right?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can also limit each withdrawal. What is the cap, right? I'll give you an example, right? So let's say one of your children is asking the trustee for a lump sum of money for medical purposes, right? You can even say, first choice, our son or our daughter must first go to a local hospital. And if the local hospital cannot provide the help, the next choice is, say, a hospital, say, in Penang or a hospital in US, right? And the cap for this one withdrawal is capped at $500,000 US, for example. So you can state things as specific as this to give the trustees the guidance. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Right? Right. So that's really for Lincoln, right? Because as we have mentioned, David and Mary, they should, of course we are assuming now, right? They are going to get the lion's share, which would be the business. Yeah. But just in case, after our conversation with David and Mary, they don't want to run the business, then this plan will have to change. We will have to probably change the plan to make sure that David and Mary, they also get a structured payout like Lincoln as well. Would that be fine?
Yes, that will be fine.
Now, there's another thing that we didn't talk about. We talked about the business already. We talked about your personal assets, how it should be structured to be paid out to your 3 children, starting with Lincoln and, of course, Yen. The other thing that we have not spoken about would be your properties, especially the residential one, right? Now, in the event that one of you passes on, I'm quite sure that you want to allow the other surviving spouse to stay in the house. Would I be right to say that?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so we make sure that happens. And also, in the event that both of you passed on, and if you still have an unmarried child, you want to make sure that the unmarried child stay in the house?
Yeah, I think our wish is that that at least one of the residential properties can always be reserved for whichever child that requires it.
Okay.
Right, until they decide to move out.
Great. Right. So the investment property can be sold, but the residential home should be kept for surviving spouse, right? And when both of you are not around, you want to allow your unmarried child to stay there. But to be fair to the rest of the children who may be married, we might want to state an age whereby this house will be sold anyway, right? Otherwise, if you have an unmarried child staying in the house forever, remains unmarried and stay in the house until he's 70, 80 years old, then the rest of the 2 children cannot benefit from the house, then they may feel unfair, right? So one suggestion I have in the plan is that you allow an unmarried child to stay until, say, a certain age, say maybe 40 years old, 35, 40 years old, right? And then once that unmarried child reaches the age of 40 years old or 35 years old, the age we can confirm that house must be sold and the proceeds get distributed equally to the 3 children. Would that be okay?
I think in principle that will be okay, but we are also thinking that for Lincoln, we might also be worried that we are not sure whether he intends to set up a family in the future.
Yeah.
And we also don't want to, one of our wishes ideally is that he can have, we can leave one of the houses to him so that he doesn't have to bother or, actually worry about trying to get a new place.
Yeah, so we can work on that because we do need to make sure that there is estate equalization, right? Yeah, so if you're going to give that house to him, we want to make sure, because one of your intent is to be fair, right? So we need to take that into consideration that if you're going to give one of the assets to him, right, it is fair for everyone, right? But yes, that is one way to do it, right? The other way to do it is that, if he reaches a certain age and remains unmarried, we sell the house, he gets part of the proceeds, he should have enough money to buy his own house if he wants to.
Okay, I think that makes sense as well.
Okay, great. Now, of course, I'm assuming that if one of you are around, right, and tell me if that assumption is wrong, okay? If one of you are around, the assets doesn't go to them yet, right? So the surviving spouse will be the beneficiaries of all the assets. Whatever I'm talking right now only happens when both of you are not around, the giving out of the business. Because if one of you are not around, Eva, you probably can run the business, or Eva, you're not around, Richard runs the business. But when both of you are not around, the succession plans happen. When both of you are not around, the distribution happens. But if any one of you are around, the assets are not given out yet.
Okay, thanks for raising that question. Suddenly a lot of thoughts came to my mind because I'm thinking if one of us not around, then on top of managing the business, and if the children come to us like, they want to start business, they want to do this and that, there's a lot for us to have to manage on by ourselves. You know what I mean? Like the conditions of the trust, right? Just now we said, let's say for whatever reason, Lincoln want to start a business or something. That means some of the things that we are trying to put in the trust, let's say they happen, right? Or they happen before the two of us conk out, right? So then the living spouse have to deal with a lot of things on top of managing the business. So I'm just wondering in the real, when this really happens, right, what is the most logical way to go about doing it?
You're saying that when one of you are not around.
Yeah, so imagine, let's say I go first, right? And then Richard is around, right? And then he's still running the business. Maybe at that point, together with Mary, I don't know whether David is on board or not. But let's say in the meantime, then Lincoln say, hey, you want to go and start his own tuition business and something. So then is Richard has to then decide, okay, how much you want to give to Lincoln.
Yeah, but you, in this situation, you would want Richard to do it and not the trustees, right?
Yeah, of course it's good for Richard to do it, but then I'm just thinking then there's a lot on his plate, right? He has to think about, okay, how much you want to give Lincoln. Then what if there's separately there's a medical emergency happening with Mary, and then I don't know, David wants money to don't know do what. It could be a lot of things happening all at one go while the business is still running.
Yeah. Understand?
Yeah.
But typically when we do this for our clients, it is very seldom that a trust kicks in when one of the spouse is still around. Okay, because you still want control of your own assets, right? Imagine this, right? So let's say, Eva, you go first, and Richard is still around. It would be a bit weird that suddenly you put a large part of your asset into a trust. And Richard has no access to that money because he's still around and he still wants to make a lot of the decisions, right? Yeah. So typically for our clients, the trust only happens when both are not around. Because if one of you are around, being a parent, you probably will want to make some decision, right? So I give you an example. Again, Eva, you're not around, okay? And then let's say a large part of asset goes into the trust. And here comes Lincoln wanting to set up a tuition business. So Lincoln goes to the trustee. The trustee decides to give the money. But Richard actually disagrees. Richard thinks it's a really bad idea. Okay? But he can't say anything anymore, right? Because it's been given into the trust, right? Legally, the owner of the assets is the trust, right? Yeah. So you can see it's a bit weird over here, right? You actually really want Richard to come in and say, okay, look, Lincoln, I don't think you should do this. Or, okay, I'll do this. Right? So I would suggest that the trust only happens when both of you are not around. When one of you are around, the surviving spouse should be the beneficiaries of the estate and continue to run the household, run the business until that last spouse passes on. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I'm definitely comfortable to hand it all over to Eva in the event that I'm not around. And likewise, I would also hope that Eva thinks the same way. But to me, I think what I just heard about from Eva is that she might feel overwhelmed. If I'm not around and she's the only one managing the entire estate. So, again, this is perhaps, Chris, you can provide suggestions or guidance on whether there are any ways that in this situation, whether Eva has any support from, whether there's the trustees that we are going to use or from any other avenues.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, the trust should not be set up when one of you are around. So there is really no trustee support in that sense. But both of you or any one of you can certainly come to us. I mean, we are your advisor. That's what we are for. Right? Hopefully that never happens, right? But if one of you are not around and the other one of you facing great challenges in deciding how you want to administer the estate, you can always come to us and we can definitely help you with that.
And then whatever we are, listing down for the trust would already be some kind of guidelines, right? Of course, that is meant to be distributed upon both of our passing, but those same considerations could guide me, let's say, if Richard's not around,
right,
to think about, okay, you want to start a business now, then, in the trust, this is what we actually thought about, how much you should get. Then whether I feel like, okay, at this moment, is that amount reasonable and things like that?
Yes. Okay, so Richard and Eva, the last part of the plan that I'm going to talk about is something that we discussed earlier. I'll just put it in first into the plan. And of course, later on, if you want to take it out, you can take it out. And that's really about protecting your assets from potential beneficiaries that actually they don't belong to your bloodline. And specifically, I'm talking about your children-in-laws and your future children-in-laws that you might have, right? So at this point, I'm just going to put it into the plan that these assets will be ring-fenced, right? And no one that is out of your bloodline will receive these assets, right? I'll leave it to you all to think a little bit about it. If you feel that you really want to take it out, you can, right? But for now, I'll just leave it in. And just remember that, as I mentioned earlier, if you're afraid that it becomes a bit sensitive and affects family relationship, you just need to know that the wishes of the trust do not need to be known to all your beneficiaries at the point of your demise. So that maybe will give you some comfort. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing I'm going to say is that usually what we advocate is that when we put in place your estate plan, whether be in a form of a will or using a trust, in your case, right, there is probably going to be a combination of both the will and trust. We strongly encourage that you sit down and you speak to your family about the thoughts behind your wishes. Of course, that ring fencing part, you don't have to say it, right? But you can after this plan is finalized, we strongly advocate that you sit your family down, right? And you explain to them why you are giving this way, right? We advocate that because at least you are around to answer any questions that they might have. And a meeting like that, you can share with your family the values that you hope to inculcate, the reasons why you give that sometimes may seemingly be unfair to one, but there are reasons why you are giving it this way. Okay? I'm just going to say the last thing before I pause and ask whether you have any questions for me for this particular segment, okay? Letter of wishes. Now, letter of wishes is typically written whether for a will or for a trust. Even for a will, you can write your letter of wishes. For a trust, it's even more important. Why? Because you are giving trustees a lot of discretion in the way that they distribute your assets to your children and to your other beneficiaries, right? And a letter of wishes is really a personal document that guides the trustee so that they know your intentions and they can distribute as close as possible to what how you want them to distribute. the letter of wishes is also a good document for you to outline your values, your hopes and intentions for your children and future generations, right? So it is sort of like a document that encapsulates all your beliefs, right? And even though you have conducted that family meeting, it is good to capture what you have shared with your family in the letter of wishes. So I think that's something that is very important for you to have, right? And don't worry, I will guide you in writing that letter of wishes. Okay, I'm just going to pause for a while and ask whether there are any questions you have for me.
Can we find out like what or how detailed do we need to share when we actually hold these family meetings?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on your comfort level, but I would suggest that if you are ready, okay, to share how you're going to distribute, right? Of course, that must be done after you are sure of the business succession plan for your enterprise, right? So I'm assuming that, let's say both your children, David and Mary, they want to take over the business, right? Then you can share in the family meeting and you can tell Lincoln, your two siblings is going to take over the business, and these are the assets I'm going to leave behind. I'm going to structure the giving this way. I'm also giving yen money this way. So you can be as detailed as that, because it allows you to share the intention, why you structure the giving annually and why not give a lump sum, why the business is given to David and Mary, why is it fair. So these are the things that you can share in the meeting, right? In a meeting also, you can talk a little bit about how hard you have worked to accumulate these assets. I mean, these assets, they don't come easily, right? And in the giving of these assets, as much as you hope that you will be able to help them start off life a lot better than both of you did, right? At the same time, you are quite concerned about not crippling them, right? Because you give them money and then it may cripple them, it may encourage laziness, and you're worried about that. You can share all this intention in the meeting. And then after that, you can, of course, hear from them some of the thoughts and concerns that they may have. Right now, of course, if you can do this meeting on your own, great. But if ever you need us to come in to help facilitate the meeting in a much more structured way, let me know. We'll be most happy to be involved in that family meeting.
So in this meeting, will we ask Jane to be present?
I think it's important for Jane to be present. Yeah, but there is no need to tell Jane that she's excluded and that she will never ever get the asset. I mean, you can position in such a way whereby, okay, you are giving as a family, right? But you are giving to your children, and of course, Jane being part of the family will also benefit from it. But there is no need to be very, very blatant to say, no, you are totally excluded. There's no way you can get a single cent. Yeah, there's no need to say that.
Another question I have is that while we may be able to share our, how hard-earned the money has come around and all that, and our values, but one concern I have is that would revealing the amount of assets that they can potentially receive, I mean, aside from the business, because in the business, the children actually have to work for it as well. But all the other remaining estate, right, if they know the potential amount that they are entitled to, would that actually still
encourage them
to
do work? Yeah, of course you can again state that, right? Because you will be able to tell them that this is what I worry, right? That if you know that you're going to inherit this amount of assets, then you may not work anymore. Yeah, but the point here is that you are still around to observe their behavior. And if at any point you feel that they are gravitating towards that, they are beginning to be slothful, not working, this is a revocable trust. It's going to be a revocable trust that I'm going to help you set up. You can always change how you want to distribute. You can still change it, right? So understand the concern. It's a valid concern, but do know that you still have the power to change how you want to distribute any point you want, anytime you want.
Okay, that's clear. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, well, if not, that really would be the very high-level plan for both of you. It's not the end, right? We're going to work. If you are generally agreeable to the plan, the next step is really to work the details in, right? Which we can do that later.
When Chris ends his sentence, there is a silence in the room. Richard and Eva hold each other's hands. Eva's expression heavy.
Yes, I think we are generally quite in line, and we like the direction. Yes, let's work out the details together.
Yeah, it just feels a bit overwhelming. I mean, there's so much to really consider. Yeah, so I think we really need your help to guide us through the whole process.
Yeah, yes, I mean, it's really quite overwhelming. It's really quite a lot, but be rest assured that, I will be here to walk through the whole process with you. I'll take you through step by step, right? It's going to be a pretty long process. But I want you to know that at any point in time, if you feel that there is a need to tweak the plan, don't feel bad about it. Don't feel like, oh, I thought we have, or rather don't feel like you have decided that with me and you feel bad about changing the plan. This is your plan, right? At any point in time you feel that you want to tweak it, we can still tweak it, right? So after this meeting, go back, think through a bit about what we have discussed. I'll send you all the documents on what we have talked about today, right? And then if you've got more suggestions, more thoughts, just let me know, right? Once the plan is confirmed, we have worked on the plan. Once the plan is confirmed, the next step really is I'm going to arrange a meeting with the corporate trustee, right? For you to meet the corporate trustee so that we can begin the first steps in setting up a trust for yourself.
Yep, sounds good.
Thanks, Chris.
Richard and Eva hover over the plan Chris handed to them. They continue to ask Chris questions about it. Chris patiently explains each detail to them. The expressions on Richard and Eva's faces slowly relax, and soft smiles on their faces beam through. All analysis, views, or opinions from interviews, recommendations, and other information broadcasted, podcasted, or published herein are provided for general information purposes only. Information expressed does not take into account any specific situation, particular needs, or objectives, and should not be construed as specific advice or a recommendation. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Providend Limited does not accept any liability for any loss whatsoever arising from any use of the information broadcasted, podcasted, or published herein. All contents and information contained herein may not be copied or reproduced in whole or in part by any means without prior consent of Providend Limited.